Okay, hello everybody. My name's Joshua. I'm the founder and director of the El Terreno Cultural Exchange Center here in the Ecuadorian Andes. Great to have you here again for yet another internship presentation. This week is from Toby Walker from the United Kingdom, who is joining us to share his work on nutrition and water quality here in the rural communities. Um, this is the culmination not just of Toby's work, but also the work of what other interns have done during this summer. And I got to say, it's been one of my favorite projects to see how it's evolved and the final impact that's taken place. And also kind of like the potential, like Toby picked up the torch, he's taken it a whole lot further, but the door is still very much open in terms of what can happen next and what we're going to do. So I will let Toby spill the rest of the beans of what happens. So over to you, Toby.
Yeah, so thank you very much for coming. I'll share my screen. So this is my presentation for the Safe Water and Child Malnutrition Project, which I have spent the last 3 months of my internship here in El Terreno working on. So a quick introduction about myself. My name is Toby Walker. I'm a philosophy, politics and economics student and a part-time chef from the UK. I'm currently on my placement year from university, so I've been given the opportunity to go into the world, find some work, practice some skills. And the reason that I'm here in Ecuador is because I wanted to get some real world experience in humanitarian aid, which is what I ultimately want to go into a career into, but also wanted to be able to see as much of the world as I could in the process. So this is the agenda for today. We'll start with the investigation and ideation, two things which started before I joined the project. I'll move on then to the water filter project and nutrition workshops, which has been the bulk of my internship here. I'll then move on to the end of the project, so the way that we wrapped up in the last sort of 10 days, and then finally onto the next steps, where how this can sort of continue making change. So to start with the background, most of this work happened during this summer project, during this summer cohort. So here's a picture of the interns who were here in the summer. Many of those people on your screen were people who were very fundamental to this project. So the first stage of this was the investigation. So it's very, very common knowledge here that the water quality is very poor. Lots of this comes from a combination of things like farming runoff, deforestation, which means that the water entering the ground is not how it should naturally be. So this results in lots of droughting and floods. And ultimately, the sort of microclimate as well will really have a negative impact on the sort of quality of water that comes into the water system. So this was started in total. There were 8 interns for this part of the project, and they took samples of the water to get it tested at the University of Bolivar, which is a local university in the province, and they took it to the to the laboratory in the university to test the contaminants and what sort of things there is in the water that's making it unsafe, which is important to know, because if it's just things like dirt, that's easier to remove than things like heavy metals or parasites and chemicals used in farming. So this was something that was very important to find out. During this time, they also interviewed some of the local residents who obviously use the water day to day. A group called the Junta de Agua, which is essentially like a community-led voluntary water board. So these are people who know everything about the water. They control who gets it, They control the chlorination of the water tanks, things like that. They also interviewed the subcentro, which is the medical center in the community of San Juan, which is the community that I've predominantly been working with, to understand the sort of illnesses that were coming in as a result of the water quality. And they also spoke to the CDEs, which are the nurseries in the area, to talk about how this impacts the children, what they do with the water to make sure that it's safe as well. Also, during the investigation, there was a medical brigade shortly before I arrived here, which consists of medical students from the University of Missouri who came to investigate local health, sort of take part in the community and offer a helping hand. There's also the Ministry of Health, who are very important in making that happen. There's also Action Sociale, which is a local initiative who help people who are sort of generally worse off in the community, and also their cities, their nurseries for the controllers, the information about the malnutrition and the quality of the water that they get. So these are a few of the statistics that they found. I'll start on the right. So in Cochabamba, which is one of the communities in the area, there was 13 out of the 24 children that they examined were diagnosed with malnutrition, which is, I mean, already a huge figure. In Atandawa, which is the village that I'm currently in, it was 16 out of 35, slightly lower, but still far greater than you would hope, than you would want. And the place that was worst affected, the community that I've been working with most, is San Juan de Jujudongo, which had 80% malnutrition rate, which makes it one of the highest in Ecuador, as a community. So this is ultimately why we were targeting San Juan specifically, to try and bring that massive number down. Here as well as some information from the health center about the most common sort of illnesses. So common cold, this second one, the intestinal parasites, largely comes from contaminated water and food, which is it's an important statistic to have. Anemia as well, low iron, comes as a result of malnutrition. And lots of these things interconnect in various ways with primarily poor water and poor nutrition. So the ideation workshop, is essentially the planning stage. So trying to understand the problem and what can be done about it. So the previous interns chose to focus on the three nurseries, the one in Atandawa, the one in Cochabamba, and the one in San Juan. They spoke about the sort of problems that they would encounter and that they thought were key to trying to bring some of these illnesses down. The ones that they came up with primarily were a poor quality of water, poor nutrition in the local food, the sort of food that they would eat in the home, and also hygiene. I think this is an important moment to reflect that the people in these communities don't necessarily have the same ideas about hygiene as we might do in the West. So, there have been, in this area, there have been workshops done about washing your hands, because that's not something that is so readily taught in schools, or it's not something that's completely common knowledge. So understanding hygiene is going to be something that's very important to bring these numbers down. So they decided on two main projects that they would use to help themselves out. The first one being having water filters in the local institutions, so that's in the schools, in the nurseries, and in the health center, and also training for mothers who would be dealing with nutrition in the home and feeding their children. And the main organizations that we were going to collaborate with was the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social and Economic Inclusion, who are two bodies who concern themselves with this sort of thing, and would be able to help, help us navigate this. Oh, pause. There we go. So then onto the prototyping stage, which is very important to make sure that we get things right and we're not just funding lots of money and energy into things that don't work. So the first prototype that I'll talk about are the water filters. So initially the plan was to have these sort of biofilters where water would pass through various layers of sediment, as you can see this photo on the right. Water would pass through things like sand and charcoal, gravel, other types of sediment, which would each remove something or improve the taste, clarity of the water. This was done by two previous interns called Daniel and Florian, who managed to raise an incredible $1,500 towards this project. And through their hard work and through all of this planning that you can see on the right side, they installed a prototype in the nursery in Atandauer. We've got a photo of that here. So there we go. On the left is the barrel with all of the different types of sediment in it. On the right is where the water would then collect and be passed through something called a Sawyer filter, which is effectively doesn't let anything pass through it that's larger than a tiny, a few nanometers, or forgive me, I can't remember the measurement, but this was what was installed on the roof of the nursery. But unfortunately, after a couple of weeks, this prototype was starting to not work as effectively as we'd hoped. And ultimately, I made the decision to change course. So this was the adaptation that we decided on. So rather than using those sand filters, we were to use some more commercial filters. So, sorry, excuse me. So you can see the filter on the bottom right here is essentially 4 steps to take out the main things in the water that we were trying to target, and also an ultraviolet light to remove to remove bacteria and parasites at the same time. With the $1,500 that we raised, we bought 4 of these filters and had 4 more donated by Good Omen Distillers, who are a friend of the project, who run a distillery in one of the local communities. So the locations that we have decided on putting them in was one in the health center, which has already been installed, 3 in the 3 nurseries that I spoke of, and then 2 filters in each of the schools, one in San Juan and one in Cochabamba. Yeah, and here's a picture of me installing one of the filters in a home just nearby. And then we'll move on to the workshops. The workshops have taken up the bulk of my time here. And this is all part of the training the mothers in the nutrition, so they will be able to cook in the home and produce the meals to deliver the best nutrition that they can to their children. So this started out with a pilot workshop in association with ARCSA. ARCSA, a local body who have nutritionists one of whom, Catalina, was the nutritionist who led these workshops. So we did a pilot workshop with the nurseries in Atandauer and San Juan here in Quilico in the El Terreno building. And this was another prototype, to see what we needed to change, to see what worked, what didn't work, what people thought was or wasn't important. And off the back of the pilot workshop that I put on with a previous intern called Yuval, we made a few changes, including moving the workshop to San Juan to make sure that mothers were more able to get there. We and something else that I was talked into by Joshua was doing some cooking demos, which I think really helped keeping people coming. It was something that I would do at the end of the workshop, just a sort of half an hour maximum demonstration of food from around the world. So, for instance, my first week was bruschetta, which is Italian snack, and I've also done tzatziki and egg fried rice. Just to sort of show what other types of food they can make with the ingredients that they will already have in the home, and just to add a little bit more substance to the workshops. So these workshops, there was a full course over 6 weeks in San Juan, which covered everything from the initial workshop, which was a bit of a live cooking demo, and it went on to things like breastfeeding nutrition, how to spot malnutrition and what to do, what sort of frameworks there are in place to help overcome some of these issues that they face all too often. For this as well, with the help of some of the people in this meeting, I raised $600, which was enough to cover the utilities and the materials, the cooking demonstrations, and also celebrations at the end. So we'll come to the evaluation from this as well. So on last Friday, I had the final workshop, and we had, in total from the start, we had 22 people sign up, and 75% of those people completed the course. There was a 98.8 satisfaction rate of the course from the mothers who were there until the end. There was an overall 16% improvement in test scores. Some of the improvements went up as high as 36% for some of the people who came. And the future of this needs to be that in 6 months, a year, 2 years, that there will be monitoring of malnutrition, especially in San Juan, to see what difference there has been. Because then ultimately, understanding how much change that we've made with these workshops is something that has to take place over a much longer period, because malnutrition is not something that you can measure just over a couple of weeks. It's got to be a longer term examination. And the feedback from the mothers as well, they all scored in their self-assessments almost entirely 5 out of 5 for each category. So that included things like how confident are you cooking nutritious meals, and also how important is nutrition to you and your family? How often do you wash vegetables? These sort of things, which was a significant increase from the first time that I gave out these questionnaires. There was also lots of feedback that the workshops were found useful and important, again, across the board. And some of the comments we had were that these workshops will help me to feed my daughter, and thank you for everything, which, is a really touching thing to see. So we'll move on to the end of the project. So this has been my last sort of week since I've been here. The way that we've been wrapping up by having the final workshop and an event as well this week that was taking place on Tuesday. So this is the graduation. On the same day as the final workshop, we had a celebration for all of the mothers who completed the course. Again, there was a 75% completion rate. There were speeches from organizations, which included the nutritionist. It included people from the Ministry of Health that Joshua and I also spoke, mainly talking about how important the work is that they've all put in, and a lot of praising for, for being able to stick it out over 6 weeks, because these people lead, very busy and very, very different lives to the sort that we are more used to. So the commitment was really, really quite special. At the end of the course as well, you can see this is one of the attendees she's receiving her recognized qualification. So what that means is it's not only, something that it's not only a certificate to say, oh, she's been to all of these workshops. It's also to acknowledge that she now has a qualification that's recognized by the Ministry of Health. And and this is another bonus. This sort of qualification will improve their job prospects, and and then them being mostly mothers, the shared knowledge that will come out of this course stretches far beyond the 20 or so people who finished the course, but will trickle down throughout the community. This knowledge will be shared with their children, with their friends, with other mothers, across schools, and hopefully that will sort of act as a bit of a catalyst to keep this change happening throughout the community. And as well, to wrap up pretty much my entire project, on Tuesday I hosted a dinner event which brought together all of the main stakeholders that I've been working with. So this is everyone from some of the mothers who attended my courses, to teachers in the nurseries, to directors of local institutions. There are people from the Ministry of Health there. There was the leader of the local cabildo, which is effectively the council, and I think we had around 35 people come for this event, which was again an incredible thing to see. We did this for a few reasons, one of which, the main reason, was about raising awareness for the filter project. We'd recently been approached by the World Food Programme, who had heard about the work that we'd been doing and wanted us to expand the project. This originally was 4 filters in 3 institutions. They wanted to increase that number to a further, I believe, like 18 institutions, something like that. So there was a lot of something of that scale really needs to involve the whole community. So raising the awareness of the project and the importance of getting these filters in was paramount, and it was something that there was a real goal for this event. Another thing was situating, oh, that's typo, situating El Terreno as a key organization in the community. That was, for me and Joshua as well, I'm sure, another really key goal, was by having all of these people here, all of the people that we're working with day in, day out, and especially the leaders of some of those organizations, to come here for an event and really get to know the foundation was another thing that was quite important, I think, for the foundation as a whole. And finally, another goal for that evening was about looking ahead, looking into the future as a collective. As I said, this sort of change would require a massive amount of community participation. So getting all of these people in the same room was really, really crucial to keeping this change happening. So this is a photo. One of the things we did that evening was an activity where people would go around in tables and talk about some of the issues that they'd face. So this table is talking about the problems and barriers that they have to, for the issue of water. And some of the things that were brought up were about having an increased amount of community-led health campaigns, more regular household visits by doctors, FEP to implement training programs, and FEP is a organization that quite often helps financially with this sort of thing. There's more call for more localized fundraising initiatives, more workshops and courses like the ones that I've been doing, enforcement of community water regulations by the juntas, improvement of waterways, contamination controls for the water, strengthening of local economies, the Ministry of Education as well to support the education of hygiene and access to safe water. So these were things that came up quite a few times after I looked back over everything that people had filled out as being really crucial things to focus on going forward. So we'll go now to the next steps, what I think needs to happen for this project to continue. This is a photo of me having just installed one of the filters in the health center in San Juan. So the things that we need ultimately to install more filters in the local institutions, when we count the price of the filters themselves, having them installed, all the materials to get that done for each institution is around $250 to $300. Another thing that we will need for this project to keep expanding is socialization and training, which is essentially not just installing filters or not just doing one cooking demo or something like that, but it's creating something where we can teach about the importance of hygiene. There might be a filter in the school, but they don't necessarily have as safe water as they do at home. So it's really, really important that people will understand why this clean water is important, and if you don't have it, how to go about getting it, etc., that sort of thing. Another thing that needs to continue is the monitoring of nutrition, like I said earlier, to really sort of measure the effectiveness of the nutrition project. It's really important that we keep getting the information about their children who go to the nurseries to see what change those made. And we also finally need more projects to empower the mothers. Something that I really took away from the workshops and especially from the graduation event was, I think, seeing people do something for themselves, seeing people commit to a change that they want to see. And if we keep having projects like this, then I think that's far more effective than just delivering things. It's really important to keep people involved and to keep people motivated to make that change by empowering them to do so. So the future of this project, what needs to continue for me is awareness campaigning. So like I said, more workshops on nutrition, maybe in other communities, similar to the type that I've been doing, and also workshops in schools around hygiene and safe water. Like I said at the start of this presentation, something like this isn't very common, but if that was made common, you'd see some of those illnesses begin to drop significantly. And to combine these workshops with the installation of more filters in the area. A different way to go about it, or a different angle to take, could be continuing to build relationships between organizations. Similar to the dinner event that was here, this got the FEP and other organizations like the Hunters together and talking about the changes that they can make. And us as a foundation, we could really act as a sort of glue that can bring these people together and make changes, not even necessarily with the organization, with the foundation directly involved, but also keeping these people in conversation and giving them giving them a platform to discuss and make the changes that they really need to see in some of these local communities. So thank you. That's the end of my presentation. And this whole project has taken a great deal of work. And although I have been now the project leader, this was the culmination of many interns who worked over this summer, and even people who've worked in the years before, people who have taken information about water mapping, and all of this research that's been done was crucial, really crucial for the changes that I have been able to make in the communities, and I would not have been able to do it without them. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I think we'll open the floor to some questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Toby. Really appreciate you pulling all of that together. Congratulations. So yeah, we'll go into some questions or answers. We would love you guys to open your mics and ask any questions, but also if you can write them down. I'll begin with a couple so that people can get thinking. So first of all, tell us a little bit more about your journey and how this experience, based on what you've been learning, you've translated the theory into practice.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So from what you've been learning at university and maybe your expectations before you came of what sort of experience you were looking for before you came and what you imagined that would be like, and how was that the same or different from what you actually experienced?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll take that in two parts. So from university, lots of what I focus on, especially in my philosophy modules, is understanding all the nuances of very big and difficult questions, and being used to coming across these questions and being used to answering them, or at least finding the processes in answering them, is a skill that I've definitely used since being here. I think understanding something like that is really important to understand, again, the local nuances that are here. For instance, understanding why the spirituality of water in Ecuador, and especially in this region, really is important to the way that these sort of projects can continue. And that adds a whole nother layer. And my expectations before coming here, I think I wasn't expecting how self-led or how much personal influence I could take over my project. And especially I think I got more flexibility because after the interns in the summer left, this sort of was handed over to me as, this is now your project. So being able to have the creativity and the sort of planning, and again, lots of discussions with Joshua about how we could move forward. These were not closed conversations. These weren't, okay, this is what needs to happen. It was more, this is the goal that we're looking for, and let's think of some ways that we can get there. So I think the flexibility of the project and of El Terreno as a foundation was something that I wasn't expecting, and again is something that I think I have definitely built upon, and in the sort of skills that I've learned and practiced since being here.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from any of the other people here on the call?
I was worried I'd forget it once you asked your question, but I haven't. It was this, Toby. Do you think the mums understand the danger of contaminated water? Because when I hear, because I do, and I've seen you've installed that filter. If it was me and I was living there, I'd be going to the nursery with my buckets, filling it up from the cleaned water, because I understand how important it is. And so part of your project must be about this education for them to understand. So I just wondered, do you think they've got a better understanding now, or at least the mums you worked with?
So yeah, so the people who came to the nutrition workshops, they were speaking about, you know, the importance of hygiene and the things that we consume. So talking about the water and, you know, talking about even the sort of water that we wash food with is very important. So I think the education in the local area about water quality is definitely something that needs to continue, as I said, with the socialization of these water filters, which unfortunately has been something that I haven't been able to do whilst I've been here, but I've you know, we've had these conversations and it's something that will be in motion. So to answer your question, yes, I think they do understand it more, but I think there is definitely more to be learned in the community about that.
And just to add to that, one of the outcomes of this project is that I've been invited to participate on behalf of El Terreno on a parish-wide board regarding health, and that's actually going to take place in a little over an hour. So there's going to be different healthcare professionals, government representatives, and other charities to talk about the issues around health in the region. And as part of that and our ongoing relationships with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education, when we install the water filters, particularly in the schools, we're not just going to install the filters and go, okay, job done. We're looking for other people that we can collaborate with. And you saw on one of the very first slides when we did one of the medical brigades in one of the schools, and they got about 40, 50 kids together, and they did a really fun dynamic activity of teaching the kids about how to wash their hands properly and hygiene. And so we want to do the same as a part of that, as a way of going, this is the tangible you know, value that you're receiving through a filter, but we're actually going to educate users an opportunity to educate the kids at the same time. So I think it's a really important part, not just to provide the accessibility, but also to educate. So a very valid point and a great question. Yes. Next question.
Next question. Firstly, great presentation. Congratulations. And
Very good.
Well done on all the hard work. I don't know how to ask this question, but was it to not come across as paternalistic or, you know, marching into somebody else's community and telling them that they've been doing it wrong for their whole, you know, many generations? That must be really awkward.
Yeah. But yeah. Thanks for the question. That's is something that this is something that I was concerned about even before I came here, but that's something that's really, really important to understand, and it's something that's important to make sure you stick to as you keep going through. So I think, well, it comes the sort of, if there is any difficulty, I wouldn't call it difficulty. I think there's more extra steps, but that's not, you know, that's not something that really makes it too much harder to put anything into place, because like in the ideation workshops, for instance, they had the 3 local nurseries and the interns all come together to discuss these problems. It's not interns saying this is a problem and this is the solution. It's more, let's talk about the problem, let's talk about solutions. Interns here can obviously maybe bring in something a different point of view, which is largely the goal of these internships. So working alongside and you know, understanding the local nuance and understanding like how to include people as well in the ways that make the most sense is something that is a very key part of the process here in El Terreno. And as much as maybe you might initially think that you can get started as fast as you might like, that the end result will be far greater than it would be if you hadn't included these people, because that you might come up with solutions that they don't feel they need, or you might do it in a way that isn't so useful to them that maybe it won't even make any change, and you've spent 3 months doing something that that hasn't made the change that you'd want. So it's really, really important to include these people, and by including them in the process, you start to you create more ideas, and you make sure that your project is more effective. So it's definitely an extra step, and is something additional to think about, but it's something that's really crucial and is key to having a successful project.
And I would absolutely agree with that. It's a very important part if you think about Ecuadorians' history and the colonization and the systemic oppression that still is evident here today. And how do we not contribute to that? And what Toby said is really important to us, that we have a participatory approach, that the end users and the different stakeholders are involved with the project from the beginning. And while the interns do a lot of the work of actually developing the solutions based on the input of the stakeholders, it's always going through this iterative process of what works, what doesn't. And I think also importantly, working alongside mentors and other local stakeholders. So mentioned Catalina from the Ministry of Health, who actually delivers the workshop herself as an Ecuadorian, helps to bridge that gap between, Toby as a foreigner and with the local community as well. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Have we got one from the fields?
Yeah.
Thank you, Toby. Absolutely amazing presentation. The work that you're doing is absolutely outstanding. So well done. I think the brilliance of all this is your graduates that you've got that are able to go out there and have that knowledge and be able to cascade everything that they've learned over the scheme. Will they be recognised in being able to deliver any further training, or how can they progress their new knowledge?
Okay, thanks for the question. So they will be, so the qualification that they have is a qualification in child malnutrition. So what this means is that they would be qualified, or better qualified, to do things like working in the nurseries as catering staff, and working in working in other places around food. So it's definitely something that gets their foot in the door of some additional training, if that's the sort of thing they want to go, if that's what they want to go down. Lots of these mothers will just have wanted to come for the specific knowledge that they'll get in the course, but I can definitely see there being people who want to take this forward and build on their knowledge. And yeah, as I said, this is a stepping stone to do that, if that's the way that they'd like to go. This sort of thing might be able to get them a job, or at least that's part of the way there. And yeah, it's definitely something they could work on and continue to build their knowledge if they choose to do so.
Yeah, from our point of view of El Terreno, that's a goal for us. How can we take this beyond a course which has value in its own right, but actually beginning to build something that is sustainable? And income generation is one of the main barriers that people face here. So if there's a way of taking the great level of participation and commitment of these mothers and turning their ability to cook in a hygienic, safe, nutritious way, and finding income generation as a consequence of that, that's definitely helping to make our impacts, and especially to empower a group of which women have very few economic opportunities. There's still quite a lot of inequality in that sense. So if we can support them to move into a direction where they can feel more empowered and have more choices, that's definitely something we want to encourage.
I think also
Okay.
it just strikes me to say, Toby, don't underestimate the power of the jungle drums. Primary school parents, primary school mums talk to each other, and if one of your delegates, for want of a better word, speaks to 2 other people and says, you know, we really should be doing this, or I found out this, it, you know, as if by magic, the news will spread. So, you know, people will learn, I think, just because they were there, that you know, it'll have that sort of knock-on cascading effect, I think, which is that Lou mentioned, that I think it'll happen naturally. And that's something about that sort of young mums of young children. So,
well, congratulations, Toby. You've put a lot of hard work into the last few months, and as I said at the beginning, you've really created something that I genuinely think has got a lot of potential for the work that we do, and you've laid some really important foundations. You'll be hearing a lot more, and of course, anyone who's watching the recording of this are very welcome to come and join us as an intern here and carry on the legacy of Toby's work. You can find out any more information on our website, elterrenoecuador.com. Any final words from you, Toby, before we wrap up your final presentation in your internship?
I've just had the best time, and I'm so thankful that I have been able to have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to come here, and that's something that I'm very thankful for, and will and it's something that I'll keep with me for the rest of my life. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Toby. Great having you here. And thanks for everyone who's joined us today. Great to have you on the call. Until the next project. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Well done, buddy. Well done,
Hasta luego.
everyone.
Well done, Toby.
Well done. Bye.
Bye.